Welcome to our final Friday feature artist interview for 2022. I couldn't be more pleased to be sitting down this evening with artist Jo Delafons. Jo's work has been on our radar for some time, and if you're new to Jo's work, you're about to find out why. After completing her embroidery degree and dedicating what some would consider a lifetime of educating art to others in London, Jo made the move to a small seaside town in Sussex, near Brighton in the UK. A life-affirming move, a fresh start, and the chance to live a very different life, rediscovering her own artistic voice. With a deep sense of gratitude, Jo has created a stunning body of work as she connects to the landscape through her daily walks and ocean swims. She states, "Out walking, I feel alive, connected and somehow reflected. The rusting boats, fragile jetties and reed-covered mudflats have seeped into me and left their traces embedded in my practice." The symbolism of sea resonates in her enigmatic sculptures as they appear to rise and fall, both strong and fragile, whilst offering safe passage across stormy seas. But don't be fooled, they're not wrecked. They are more elemental forces at play, and Jo breaks her forms up to let light through, to create silhouettes that emerge or dissolve. Jo explains they ferry the spirit like split pods carrying a seed within. Lockdown saw the emergence of yet another great body of work for Jo in what she affectionately calls her walk boxes. Here, Jo shared a breath of fresh Sussex air with her following on social media, like sugar cube medicine for the soul. Jo's repeating cube form echoed the strict confines and routine predictability of empty calendar days that we can all relate to, in direct contrast with the expansive sense of freedom and wonder one experiences out in nature. Yet another testament to the reverence Jo has for nature and her gratitude for being able to live a creative life and share that with others. Just like the sea, life has many ups and downs, and we couldn't be more grateful for Jo for turning these experiences into stunning artwork that we all get to enjoy and appreciate. For this, we thank you, Jo, for sharing your artwork with us throughout your stunning Instagram feed and tonight as our 86th Friday feature artist interview. So, let's take a voyage together. Please help me in welcoming Jo Delafons. Hi, Jo.
Hi, Ange.
I hope you enjoyed your slideshow. It was so good.
Thank you so much. Yes, it was great. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. It's nice to see.
Well, full disclaimer, a lot of those words were yours, which were taken off your gorgeous artist statement, and especially the one about sugar cubes for the soul. I just love that. That was beautiful. So full disclaimer, those were Jo's words.
Thank you for putting all the lovely little clips together, because you did it beautifully as always. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. We have got so many people joining us live tonight and I'm excited. So I'm going to pop a few names up. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Patricia. Lorna Crane's with us. Hello, beautiful Lorna. Hi, Fiona from Lancashire. Madeline, I can't believe this is our last one for the year and we're up to number 86, Jo. This is
that's
crazy.
Amazing.
I know. So great things have come out of lockdown.
Yeah, I've so enjoyed listening to the interviews, and yeah, it's just such a great resource.
Wow, someone from hello.
Wow,
Jerusalem. That's amazing. Oh, fantastic. So many. Hi, Karen. Like, I'm going to go on because, you know, it's the last time. Let's get everyone's name up there. Hi, Francie, Kia Ora. Betty from Israel. Hello. The beautiful Eva from Sweden. Gorgeous. Hello. Margaret, Liz, fantastic, Gail. So I just want to remind people you are most welcome to make a question and a comment to Jo when we're talking, and I will do my very best to put it up there. But first of all, Jo, I mean, I'm really interested to know a little bit about your background and how your family background to start with, and then how you sort of became an artist and an art educator.
Well, I was born in London, West London, in Ealing, and I grew up very happily, very close family, very supportive parents, and I'm one of 4 girls in my family. No brothers. I've got 2 older sisters and an identical twin, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's great, actually, being a twin. I mean, it's lovely having sisters, and it's wonderful to have a twin, because you've always got somebody you're so close to who's there. You know, growing up, you've got a kind of best mate. You know, we're still very close, so that's lovely. And I think, I mean, my parents weren't madly arty. They both were sort of English literature graduates, are very passionate about education. And my dad was a senior civil servant in the Department for Environment, and my mum was a TEFL teacher. And one of my sisters is a music therapist. They're all quite creative and arty in their own way. They all do sort of creative things, but not well. At least my sister's full time, but at some point, you know, different things. But yeah. So and actually something that actually probably had a big impact on me was when we were growing up. We were fortunate enough to have a cottage in Littlehampton, which is not far from Shoreham, where I am now. And my mother still has a cottage there. And we used to go down at weekends. So my dad would finish work on a Friday night, and we'd pile in the car and we'd go down. And we'd walk on the downs and spend a lot of time on the beach, a lot of beach combing. Had an amazing book about secrets of the seashore. And I loved trailing the shingle bank there, and, you know, sort of looking in rock pools and things like that. And I think that connection with the area, when I moved, that was one of the pulls back to this sort of coast. Yeah, it's not the most beautiful in the world, but it's got its own charm, and it's got a wonderful river here, and I'll talk about that later. But yeah,
here's a few images that.
Yes, so I'm now near Brighton. I'm about 20 minutes by train from Brighton, on the south coast of England, and Shoreham's got an amazing collection of fantastic old houseboats and lots and lots of different boats, and this very wide tidal river that's shallow, with distinctive mud flats, which has had a big impression on my work, really.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, that's fantastic that you can find inspiration. I mean, inspiration is everywhere. I believe that. You've just got to look at it, and artists do a beautiful job at seeing it. But, you know, when I think of mud flats, I don't necessarily think of amazing sculptures. So you've done an amazing job to translate that into your work. Was it something that came easy for you, or was it just something more instinctive?
You know, well, I've sort of skipped, haven't I? Because I had a long career in teaching in between. Yes. And so I was coming back to my work. Perhaps I should explain where I went. Shall I fill you in? Because I suppose I'm kind of working backwards. I think I always knew I wanted to do art in some form, and I was always drawing and making things when I was little, and very encouraged, you know. And it was the thing I felt I was most at home at, and it was always the lesson at school that I loved and could have done all day, you know. And I still remember things I made when I was at primary school, you know. So I think it had a big impact on me, and I think often that's underrated, those kind of experiences, but I think that they can really stay with you and form you. And when I left school, obviously I did an art foundation, and I really struggled to know which area I wanted to specialise in. I think I was worried about making a living, actually. I felt at the time I wanted to do fine art, really, but I don't think I was really ready don't think I had any sense of really what I wanted to say. You know, you're only 19 then.
Yes.
You don't have a lot of life experience, you know.
Yeah.
And I was conscious that I could find myself sort of in a studio for 3 years, pretty much left alone, then having those kind of savage crits, you know. I think fine art departments were quite sort of male dominated, bit macho, you know. I don't know. I thought, I'm not sure that how much I'm going to get out of this at this point. And I thought, I really want to leave, spend some time and acquire some skills and make that I can maybe use after college. Although I love my family, I really wanted that experience of not living at home. So I did apply in London, which has obviously got fantastic colleges. But I loved Loughborough when I looked around, and I loved their embroidery course. But at my degree course, you had to do a year of paperwork for textiles, and it was very pattern based, and that wasn't me at all.
Yeah.
And so I kind of always in the back of my mind had this hope I could change into the embroidery course. But I applied for jewellery, and I had a fantastic year learning all the basic skills of jewellery making and silversmithing. Yeah. And they're fantastic course, and you had intensive training that first year. And I loved it, but I realised I don't see myself doing this the rest of my life. I found it a bit frustratingly slow, a bit, you know, I don't quite have that patience for jewellery making. But I mean, looking back, I did do one piece I remember I did that's in a weird way rather like what I do now. I did this big hat pin that was really long, and I used to wear a hat that was a bit like a bag. And I had this massive hat pin that was a bit lethal. You know, stumbling out of the student pub, you know, late at night. You don't want to end up with that through your throat. But it was really long, and it had a kind of wave form through it. And then it had all these delicate springs with actually kind of teddy bear eyes and kind of bits of titanium and things, sort of chips of it. And so it moved when you walked. And I suppose that's sort of, I can see a link slightly. And then at the end of my first year, I spoke to my tutors and I said, I really, really want to go into embroidery, and they let me transfer. And funnily enough, you know, I never used a lot of fabric, but the course was brilliant in that it was so open. So if, you know, you had people doing everything from millinery to lingerie to, you know, very fine embroidered pieces to very fine art approach. And I really loved the fact that in embroidery, whereas in fine art, you can be quite daunted by the sheer history of fine art, I think, especially when you're that age, you go, you feel a bit as though everything has been done before. You know? And in embroidery, to me, it felt fresh and exciting and different, and had so many interesting techniques and things that you could experiment with that felt a little bit like, I don't suppose I was particularly, but felt like you were pushing the boundaries more easily. You had something you could work against, which I think is actually a really exciting aspect of embroidery. And when I was on my degree, I developed a lot of techniques for using wire and paper. And when I first discovered these techniques, I got very caught up in a whole series of work about collections and this idea of things that we treasure and why. And I did a series of work for my degree show that explored different museum collections and private collections, sort of thing. But for instance, Pitt Rivers, I love Pitt Rivers. I don't know if you know that museum. It's an anthropological museum in Oxford. And I did a lot of things with waxed leather, that when you put hot wax onto the leather, you could pull it into shape and it becomes like ebony. You've probably tried, you know, you can trim it into shapes. I did lots of things with carved plaster and little leather kind of boxes on layers of paper and things, big collections, maybe 80 objects in them, laid out in a sort of ritualistic way. And I did work that was about a play on scale. So I did some work inspired by lots of drawing at the Natural History Museum. But I did like mini diplodocuses, you know, sort of out of pull iron paper that looked miniaturized, and then things under microscope slides. And it was quite figurative. And then after my degree, I was offered a year to progress my work further. And during that year, I completed lots of commissions that I'd got. I was lucky at my degree show, I got quite a few. But they gave me this year to work across departments, and I started doing a lot of paper making and printmaking. And I suddenly was sick of my work, and I'd done this floor piece, which to me epitomized. I suddenly went right off it. I was like, oh, it was like a miniaturized archaeological dig, and it had hundreds of objects in it and little skeletons and things. I thought, oh God, it's just got too figurative. I want to strip it all out and pare it down to nothing. You know, I want to go right back. And I started doing these very simple, abstract cast paper reliefs off clay, actually, with very simple forms within them. And they were about how light affected the form and cast its own shadows. So my work changed dramatically then, and it stayed abstract for a long time. In fact, until I went to Shoreham. But I didn't, once I started teaching, I didn't have a huge amount of time or energy left for my work, you know.
Teaching, you give it all, don't you? You give it all to the students, and I can imagine that you would have been a really popular teacher as well.
I hope so.
One that kids loved.
I think, do you know, it's funny, when I was doing my degree, I did realise, I managed about a year. I did something called the Enterprise Allowance that our government did, and it was fantastic for artists and musicians and so on. Any creatives, I think everyone did it. If you came out of art college, then you did the Enterprise Allowance, because basically it got you were paid, you did a business plan, and you were able to carry on with your work and not get hassle about getting a real job, you know. And so that allowed me to develop my work a bit further. And but during that year, I was aware, I felt quite isolated, and I thought, you know, I'm never going to be able to make a living just doing this. I need something else. And I'd always liked the idea of teaching art. I knew that I could enjoy that. But at the time, I rather arrogantly thought, oh, I'll teach on foundational degree, you know, and I'll just get my PGCE and then I'll do higher work. And I think I totally underestimated how much of a vocation it is, and how much there is to teaching. You know, it's so underrated sometimes. I think, you know, if you I got involved, you know, I started training and I loved it, and I found it all encompassing, and I wanted to put a huge amount into it. And I think I started in secondary art education. Obviously, that was what my training was for. And in this country, you can't be a specialist at primary age as an art teacher. Everyone is a generalist below the age of 11, you know, in terms of teaching. And I had done some work on my postgrad, working for East Midlands Arts, going into schools and doing some work with younger children. And I loved it. I loved that energy. So although I trained for secondary, I was always keeping an eye for a job in primary should anything come up. And then my sister spotted this job as a head of art in a prep school, which is private, which I hadn't considered, and doesn't quite fit with my own conscience, because I'd like everybody to have the same quality of education, you know. But I'm afraid I did swallow that one, because it was an amazing school and I was incredibly lucky to work there, and it had the most phenomenal facilities and staff, and it was great fun to work at. You know, I thought I had this preconceived idea it would be stuffy. It wasn't stuffy at all. The staff were great fun. The kids were wonderful. The parents were great. So I had a really happy career there for a very long time. But sadly, eventually, the school grew and grew, and I wanted to maintain the standards. I'd got a good reputation I'd built up for the school art department, and every play, every kind of fashion show, every film, everything I put as much as I could into. And I ended up kind of sort of 1 year after about 22 years doing it, I suddenly realized I hit the summer, I was exhausted, really beyond exhaustion. And I felt this sort of mounting panic about the year approaching. We had a new head coming, an inspection. I won't go into it, but I became really unwell. And it was a kind of wake up call about recognizing the balance in your life isn't quite right, or is actually majorly wrong. I'd kind of, as I got busier and busier, I'd sort of narrowed my life. And I suddenly felt like I really badly need to see the horizon, literally the horizon, not just like school gates,
Yes.
And
it's so amazing. Yeah.
And
I think sometimes you do have to sort of hit that breaking point to really make a big change in your life. And, and then once you do, you kind of feel this big weight lifted off your shoulders, and then you could step into your own creativity and start making a gorgeous art.
That's so true. I mean, it's one of those things. I would not recommend a breakdown. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't go through that again if I could choose to. However, there is a real silver lining in these things, because I think I would have just continued running myself ragged. And although I was really, really happy in my job until this point, I think I needed that change, And what's fantastic out of this is I have had the chance, I'm 56. I kind of, I had the chance to kind of leave that life, because I'd managed to buy my flat. I was able to rent my flat out and remortgage, and I bought a little flat here. And I actually, when I got better, I went back to work. I couldn't leave it. I couldn't make that break immediately. It was too close to my heart. But about 3 years after, I stepped down from head of department and I went part-time, and I suddenly had the balance back. I was going down to Shoreham, and I was doing start, and it was amazing how the moment I had more time, my creativity for myself came back. I always found teaching incredibly creative.
Of course,
and I love the fact with teaching that you're always looking at what will interest all sorts of different characters in your classes, and what would be a way in. So you keep I love the fact that you keep such a broad, excited look at everything, So I'd go to see exhibitions that I might not have chosen for myself. I think sometimes we can end up narrowing slightly, because you get quite choosy about what really appeals to you, and you keep this really broad ranging look at things. And I think it kind of encouraged me to, it made me sort of resourceful about using what's just there, what's accessible, what's there.
Yes, of course. Well, Jane says that it was a privilege to have worked alongside you, Jo. And
Jane.
Yes, I love
Jane
the work.
Was my saviour. She's amazing.
Thanks, Jane. And Rita says, a year after work-related breakdown, I opened up my gallery study. The best thing I ever did. Yes.
Yeah, well
I always say, I always say without darkness, there is no light. Sometimes you got to go through some shit. Pardon my French, but you do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody does, it all happens, it's one of those things, there's no point in kind of, beating yourself up about it.
No, because look at this. I want to really show people what came out of, what has come out of you after, 25 years of teaching and dedicating your life to others. And I want to start with some of your earlier work, Jo, and then maybe I know people are really keen to hear about your walk boxes, but I'd love to go through some of your most gorgeous vessels. And
yes,
this one,
I'm so talkative.
I'm itching to get to the images as well.
Okay, so I'll just go through these fairly quickly. Funnily enough, this is one of the earliest pieces that I did. I did a lot of drawing on the riverbank here by the houseboats when I first came. I didn't have a studio, and I spent literally weeks and weeks just really happily drawing there and really intently looking at everything. And they have amazing jetties and loads of junk, and I would pick bits and pieces up. And so this was copper from an old boat that I peeled off. It was sort of a wreck that was going into the ground, and there's a broken hammer there that I just picked up from the riverbank, and another bit of wood. And I just kind of wired this together with pieces of burnt cardboard. That is actually not wood. I think I used a mixture of wood and cardboard there, but it's a little bit like a boat, this piece. It's just simple, but I liked it, and it's typical of those that my first pieces reflected the riverbank and houseboats more.
Did you happen to bring your sketchbook with you today?
Oh, do you know, I think I thought maybe it was too. It's funny. Yes, I have got it here. I thought, but this is. I should. No, I'm not going to make apologies for this, because when I first came, I did a lot of drawing that's very. It's not how I would draw if I was doing my sculptures, but it's what I was doing when I was looking intently. So I did all these drawings, these concertina.
Get up a bit higher, up a little higher.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. No, that's perfect. There's the boat. Yep.
Here you get a sense of the. These are all 5 meters long, and I did lots and lots of.
That's it. Yep.
Drawing along the riverbank here. Sorry, I don't know if I've shown you very well there. But
we get a sense. We get a sense of that scale.
I did lots of sketchbooks where I have loads of drawing.
Wow.
And I think just the intense looking really fed in. And then I was picking up nails from the wood fires that people had there, and little pieces of wire and stuff. And that's when I started building my sculptures.
And one of them here is called Pier, and I just love this. Like, you can see the rusty nails here, and then the wire and the little symbol, like the little silhouettes of boats. Tell us about
this. Again, it was an early piece, but what I liked, I put this in because I like the drawn aspect, which I still have in my work. I've now quite often used pastes and things to get a slightly inky kind of line, but I like the way it's almost disappearing and just parts of the structure there. And also, I think for me, this piece actually, it trembles. So you walk past it and it would tremble, and it would sort of tap dance on the on the counter. And I liked this idea that the work barely touches the ground. I think when I first came here, I was so happy. I felt like I was floating on air, and I just would feel like my spirits just rise when I came out the station and just walk here, and everything went up in the air in my sculptures, and that's something that I've tried to keep, is this feeling of weightlessness. And also, I think those jetties, I see a relationship. I tend to work from a feeling. So that's Brighton, the 2 piers in Brighton, the terribly sad, that West Pier was so stunning, and it's still stunning as a burnt structure, but someone set fire to it and it's falling. But the structure's so beautiful. I watch the murmurations of starlings there a lot in this time of year. It's very cool. There's a relationship there with, always in my work, there's a connection with emotion, your own personal emotion for me. And this idea of a wobbly structure, it kind of reflects the fact that we need balance, and that we all feel a bit wobbly at times. I see some sort of relationship in that fragility and that need for balance. So I feel very connected with those structures for some reason. I feel they absolutely typify things that are important.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that in your work, Jo. It's beautiful. I can imagine totally why you're so drawn to these places. They're incredible. And you've reflected so beautifully in your work. It is.
Yeah, that one there, that one looks a bit like a drawing, and that one was again a piece that it's about those wobbly structures, but do you see it has these rubber washers on it that I found, and they remind me of the sort of hoops you toss at a fun, a fairground. Yeah. And again, this idea of life is kind of like a game of chance, and they remind me of those games like pickup sticks where you have all the things jumbled and you have to pull the sticks away, or snakes and ladders where you roll a dice and your luck changes. And I think it's life is a bit like that, isn't it? Something happens and your life takes a very different course suddenly. And so that idea of chance and instability, or everything can be great. I mean, that's not meant gloom and doom. Everything seems to be happening happily on the top, but there's that slight underneath feeling that it's not quite solid.
Yeah. Don't push it too hard. It might fall off.
Yeah.
Going back to your drawings, Madeline has asked, what do you use to draw with? Or what?
In these particular books, I'm actually a massive fan of. They're called Tombow pens. I don't know if you know them, but Tombow, and I use a thin fine line pen, which is permanent. I use a mixture of permanent pen and Tombow, and Tombows have a brush one end, and they're very water soluble. I use a Payne's grey and a black, and the Payne's grey gives you these lovely soft grey tones. I sometimes use a candle on them, and you get the detail and you get the sploshy washes where you want it, kind of thing, which I like.
Gorgeous.
Good for working outdoors. Really great for working outdoors because you can twist the pen and get lovely marks. If I draw more freely on the coast, I draw quite differently.
Well, Vicky says she loves her Tombows. I've never heard of them before, so that's fantastic. Daniel's put a link up for people who haven't also heard of them.
Yeah, they are great.
And also, Vicky's wet shoes are hanging outside after crossing the creek, just like your ones in your
Yeah, you go down there. I've got lots of drawings with these welly boot trees with welly boots on, and I like these kind of boots stuck on at angles.
Yeah. You mentioned before murmuration, and it is just something spectacular to behold, I would imagine.
I'm so lucky living here.
Oh my goodness.
My partner he's probably got 25,000 photographs from the last few years, and probably half of them are murmurations.
Oh, I bet. I'll just put one up now.
Yeah, we're obsessed.
Do you know why they do it, or what the style?
Apparently, I think they're very social little birds, but they do it to deter predators. So they must. I don't know if they're actually sort of. I'm sure there's an element of fun, but there are peregrine falcons and birds that will attack them, and when there are any predators around, they bunch together and they create these amazing shapes that can be incredibly fluid. And apparently, I read that they only can see the 7 birds next to them, but they're aware with that 7 birds, and they also swap to the edge of the murmuration, so that you get these amazing changing clouds of birds. They do it for about 40 minutes here from October through to about February, every night from Palace Pier in Brighton. So you can just go down there. It's like a free show, like a beautiful ballet. It's amazing.
Beautiful. And your work that, you look at the movement here, and you've got some gorgeous videos on your Instagram as well that show it, and the sound of the waves is incredible. And then your work that's reflecting that movement is stunning.
Yeah.
Sorry, go.
Funnily enough, something I often feel this sense of movement. It can be about a wave, or there's, you know, that sense of of wind and being out in nature. But I also think of it as an internal thing. So it's that feeling of thoughts moving around as well. It's an emotional. I tend to start with a feeling as much as anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How important is it for you as an artist, or anyone as an artist, to conceptualize their work? You know, like, we can all be inspired and then create something in response, but then to be able to sort of, you know, conceptualize that and articulate what we're feeling, it must. I don't think it's an easy thing to do.
I think it really depends on yourself. I mean, I'm not consciously trying to conceptualize it. I think I'm just reflecting what I feel about it, and why what motivates me to make something, or how. For me, I feel just very connected with this area, and with, I think, having this particular experience, it's given me a chance to look back on my work and reflect back on that experience and reflect, because even though it happened a long time ago, it left. It's still something I'm sort of dealing with. So for me, that's just irretrievably linked. But I think for some people, their work can be, they enjoy the process of particular skills. It might not have a conceptual base, or it might not have a strong, and I think that's okay too. I think the important thing is to do what feels right and true to you, and not feel that you have to be one thing or another. You know, it's all okay.
Yeah. Gail has asked a really beautiful question, and thank you so much, Gail. So she says, I'm interested in the delicate balance in your works. The centre of gravity seems to be tenuous. I love that word. That's a beautiful word. Do you build your sculptures up from the bottom, or create and then find a way to sort of stabilise them with any special tools?
You know, that's a really good question. It's funny. I had a nautical engineer buy a piece of my work, and he was looking at me. He said, I can't understand the way you build these. He said they just seem crazy. They don't make any sense. Like that. But he liked that about them. But if I could avoid having masts or having any support, I would. And that's something I'm working on at the moment. I prefer it if you can't see a central support. And it's actually something I'm just reworking a piece at the moment. You can see a sort of a steel rod through that one. But I'm now exploring. So actually this piece here on the right is one I'm literally working on now. And I haven't got it right yet. It will go back on a base with some layers which I want to space out, as though the light is coming through the river. Sort of reflecting on the water. So these are burnt sort of cardboard with gesso and wax, the layered cardboard. But I think I will be separating them with wires, so it looks more like the light reflecting on the river. And to me, this piece is more like it's almost, for me, it's a sort of moon river where you've got a feeling of the movement of the water and the moving of winter branches. It's not actually a ship. Not that matters, but it's still being worked on. That's why there's weird. But you can see on the one on the right that I've removed these, what looks like a pylon in the middle of the center, and that's interesting me a lot. And there's a previous piece where it's almost like a wave, where there's masses of paper pulp shaped, and it's just held in space. Actually, not that one, but doesn't matter. But I like this feeling of things just suspended.
Yes.
Defying gravity. I'm sorry, I don't think that's answered her question. I don't really build. I almost build in a crazy way. I often put the support in last. I normally try, which sounds odd, but I try to make it without it, and then I thread it through often at the end, which doesn't make any sense. But it's also how I work, because I don't set out with a plan.
Yes.
That's quite important. I find it more exciting to just play. And then I often am playing fairly aimlessly and then I start putting my things together, and that gives me ideas, and I go from there. And I find that if I set out and I've drawn something first, it often kills it. It's like I'm working to a plan, and I find it's much better to work more intuitively and spontaneously and allow it to just grow and change. And I often hold things together very lightly, so that I can just take it apart again or rebuild it, or it can change into something else. And it often just before, if I am showing or something, I suddenly think, oh my God, I never actually secured it all. I have to kind of like have to unbuild it to kind of actually secure it, because I realise I've had these pieces hanging around, and then I'm like, oh, that didn't actually.
I love that idea though of just, you know, holding things lightly, and it does give you that flexibility. And then also you mentioned that the simplicity of your techniques, like you just keep it simple and not having things too complex, and having soldering irons and things like that allows you that freedom as well to change your mind.
I work with really simple methods. I feel people might be disappointed because you've interviewed people on here with amazing skills, but I think my strength is often in how I put things together, and I like that simplicity. I think there's enough going on in my work. It doesn't need more. Yeah. I'm actually working on less. Yes. My thought process is so on, I'm quite kind of all over the place, and my studio is pretty chaotic. So I think they are quite a true reflection of myself. They are. In a way, they're like portraits, self-portraits. I don't mean them to be, but I do definitely connect with them. The ships, they definitely are elements of myself in the work, for sure.
Well, Gail says, thank you so much. And it does answer her question. She understands fluid is where creativity blooms. That's a beautiful way to describe that, Gail. Thank you. And that's my approach too. Valerie, actually, you did touch on it. Valerie was asking a technical sort of question, like how do you hold the pieces together?
Generally just wiring them. I try and avoid glue as much as I can. I try and be very sustainable in what I do. And I like to stitch or bind with wire as much as I can. Gosh, I'm just noticing the time. You wanted to ask me about my walk boxes, and I'm talking so much. I'm sorry, Ange.
No, I am so itching to get to the walk boxes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Tell us. No, it's fine. I love it. Everyone's happy. We're good. It's Friday night. We've got nowhere else to be. I love it. I honestly loving just listening to you talk and listening to you, how you responding to your work and your environment. It's such a privilege. So please don't rush. It's wonderful. Walk boxes though, they set Instagram on fire during lockdown, and I remember sitting on the couch with my beautiful mother-in-law Noni, and she's going, "Oh my gosh, you need to look at Jo's walk boxes and look at her vessels," and it was sugar cubes for the soul. So thank you.
I think people did. I was surprised by the response. I think people really did relate to them. You know, I mean, everyone found lockdown so tough, and I really felt for people who didn't have ready access to nature and getting out somewhere beautiful, because my God, those poor mums stuck in like blocks of flats with kids and homeschooling and trying to do a job. I mean, you know, hell.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, apart from the medics and so on, but you know, I suppose everybody found it tough, didn't they? And I have to say, the first lockdown, I felt quite cross with myself. I found it really hard to work, which is pathetic, because
it's not.
Beating myself up about it, because I thought, Christ, this is
your
when
time.
you can do it. This is when, you know, like, or not that but you know, this should be a relief. I think because I wasn't happy, and my mother was actually did better than most people. She's so self-sufficient, but I was worried about my mum in London, and at the time it was scary. We forget now, but there was all this like, you can't even go in the room and help someone. You know, I struggled with whether I should have gone to London to be with my mother and make sure she was okay and that kind of thing. And I really found it hard. I was on my own here, and I'd always been very happy living on my own. I'd made good friends here and stuff, and then everyone kind of melted away. Everyone was into their own things, and it just felt, I just found it hard. I was doing a lot of walking and going out probably for longer than the hour, but nobody was around. So, but it was, I did find it difficult, and I wasn't very productive. I did a few commissions for people, but I wasn't really happy with my. And then I came out of lockdown, and I'd gone from feeling really happy with my life and perfectly happy single, and I was like, I do not want to go through another one of them on my own.
So what did you do, Jo?
I got on the internet and thought, I am going to meet someone. And, I really wouldn't have summoned much enthusiasm for doing that. But like, especially between lockdowns, how do you meet someone, And I
think a lot of people were feeling the same way.
Sorry?
I think a lot of people were feeling the same way. So maybe it was the perfect time to connect.
It was the perfect time in a way. Yeah. I chose carefully. I went with this women only site. I'm only saying this because I bet there's loads of single women out there. I'd give it a
I mean, I'm married, but
no, you thought you were tuning in for fibre art, but actually
this is Dating 101 with Jo, everybody.
But yeah, I went with one of these women only sites where you get to have control, you make the approach, and then you don't end up going out and answering loads of messages with people you don't want to talk to. So that was perfect. So that's my top tip. Yeah, because you can just minimize it to a tiny fraction of time and just meet who you want to meet. And I minimized it so well that the first and only bloke that I wanted to meet up with is now my partner. And I just feel really lucky. We met between lockdowns. We just hit it off, and we've got so much in common, and we now walk. We go on these big walks. It completely fed into my work. I think suddenly I was so happy. A lot of these are his photographs. He's a really talented photographer. He's Never Mind Day. If you look at my Instagram, you may well find him in there. But we walk together, and he photographs, and I collect little bits, and that's how the walk boxes started. Really, I was feeling so happy. They're so light. They're very small. They're only about 10 centimeters, and each walk that I did, I sort of picked up something that seemed to typify the walk, and I tried to capture. Quite often they make a noise if you turn them, a lot of them, and I just tried to capture something of the weather changing too, or the light. So some of them, if you turn them, you get a different view. It was that idea that you can turn them around and have them however. I originally displayed them laid out like a calendar, and they were supposed to be like these sort of empty calendar days, that a walk filled them. And they're also a little bit like a gift, they've got this rigid confines, and then it's like the walks themselves were these like precious gifts that just kept you going. So they were really made for myself, and they were a record of time. They're not long. I don't think, they're fairly impermanent. I don't think they'll last forever. They're still there. But and it allowed me to use colour. I was feeling very loved up. We were in our happy love bubble for ages, and it was just really lovely to have. It just came very naturally, the walk boxes. And the funny thing is, actually, I kind of intended to keep doing them. Who knows? I may go back to doing them because people loved them, and I enjoyed making them. But I struggled when it came to summer. It's so funny because we met in late summer, and I began doing them in the late autumn, going through winter. But I think for me, winter, we're excited about winter coming, other than the heating bills. It's more graphic. You get those bare branches, different light, less colour. And as somebody I love colour, but I don't use it a lot in my work. It's more linear and tonal and texture and form. So colour just feels to me often decorative, and I have removed it. Not that there's anything wrong with decorative, but in my work it kind of overcomplicates. I prefer to use like just what's there. So if rust leaks through, or I use the materials, or I'll use something natural to colour things. But yeah, I find that the winter for me was a much more, it generally is a more creative time for me, actually. I can really struggle in the summer for some reason. I mean, you know, but I think we all, well, so I get fallow periods and then I get really productive periods, and I just have to accept we all work to different rhythms, you know. And I think that someone said, and this sounds so pretentious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Someone said, if a writer's looking out the window, they're still working. And I think there's an element of that as an artist. If you're walking, you know, when we're on our walks, we are constantly drinking it in. And I find I get so much from that experience all the time. And just that feeling of feeling connected in yourself, and just really at one with what you're looking at, and just that sharpness of looking and taking it in, you know, is so fulfilling and wonderful. You know, I still feel like I have to pinch myself that I'm here doing these walks and having these opportunities. And it's so funny, putting these works together, I was looking at it, I thought, oh my God, you know, apart from the walk boxes, perhaps people won't see the landscape in my work, because to me, I feel it's absolutely there, even though the ship form has dominated a lot of my work as a sort of symbol, like you talked about in the film, of this idea of kind of emotional experiences, a way of depicting that. But it's a bit like, I want the landscape to be there almost as though it's carrying you. It's kind of, there's a sense of it. So there'll be a sense of the branches or the mud flats or the silhouettes of the landscape, and the way, the broken forms that I use where the light comes through. If you walk by the river here, you see these silhouettes of the mud banks, and it just, I feel like the landscape's there kind of holding it. Yeah, exactly. You see those sort of little spiky shapes. As it gets darker, those lines and the shapes, they come to the fore, and you see these lovely ink lines and lovely reflections there. So these kind of things hugely influence my work.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love this photo here that you sent through to Jo.
Oh my gosh, we had there was one day we went up to Chanctonbury Ring near here, and my hair froze. Yes. We were going out at sunrise a lot in fog, all weathers, and my hair actually turned white. Just the moisture in the air, it then froze. So my hair went into this frozen white. It was so weird. Yeah. Well, that's me wearing my dry robe. I look like a womble, but
no, I love it. I think I love that.
It's a big thing, the going in the sea and swimming, you know. So we all have these huge coats, which keep you warm afterwards, and they're absolutely brilliant on walks. Yeah, sound like an advert for a dry robe. Sorry.
I'm fine. I have got some more questions about your walk boxes, if you don't mind. So everybody says, of course, that they're absolutely fabulous. Absolutely gorgeous. And Eva hadn't seen them before, but they're gorgeous. I knew you'd love them, Eva. They're just beautiful, aren't they? And she asked, are they made in fabrics or what's?
No, I have used the odd bit of silk organza, which I rollered with printing ink, weirdly, because I found if it was I only had a pale one, that's silk organza. I've actually rollered it, because I found if I put black printing ink over it very thinly, it would go more see-through. But generally speaking, I used very, very, very fine thin papers, like sumi papers. Generally, I used a mixture of monoprinting. I'd used kind of crushed chalk and earth and ashes and different things. I'd use stuff I found on the walk within the boxes always at some level, whether it was inside or mixed into a binder, or that one's based on the poppy field that you showed.
Yes.
There's a photograph of, this is my favorite field. I think it's always my favorite field, even when the poppies aren't out. It's got this dark square in the corner that changes. It's right by an amazing dew pond as well. I don't know if you know these dew ponds. It's like a mirror in the landscape. It's absolutely perfectly round. They put them into the clay, into the chalk for animals and to keep water up there. You get these like mirrors in the area reflecting the sky. Stunning.
Wow. I love this image too here, Jo, where you've got one of your beautiful vessels and the walk boxes, and it shows the transparency, and then you've got the landscape outside.
It's actually quite hard to photograph them to show how transparent and light they are. It's funny, I began at that one, I just put a few of the winter walks out. I've probably got about 50 walk boxes. But yes, it's nice when you can see them with the light coming through them, and sometimes that hasn't come across in my photos. This is in a beautiful house I show in May on the 7th in the Brighton Artists Open Houses. It's a gorgeous house, and I'm lucky because I had a whole room where I could show my sculpture.
Yeah. And if people were interested in buying your walk boxes, do you sell them sort of through your Instagram, or how does that sort of, or are they just more for personal work, or how does it work?
It's so funny. I don't know. I haven't sold them. I've had a lot of requests to buy them. I'm not very sales driven. I should be more. I found those they were from a special period, when I fell in love, and I think they're not. They were small personal things, and I'm fond of them. I kind of don't want to break up the collection as well, because they. So I haven't sold them. I might do some to commission. I mean, if anyone's interested, they're welcome to contact me through Instagram, send me a message, and I could make something. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
I haven't put those for sale.
No, that's good.
I don't necessarily. I do normally sell my work, and people contact me through Instagram or my website's down. Actually, I've got to redo it. But I do sometimes work to commission. It's always best, isn't it, when someone sees something and they just love it.
Oh yes.
Commissions can be really tricky, because someone always has an idea of what they want, and it's often different from your idea. And it's a difficult one, because they often don't want to dictate to you and say, oh, it's fine, whatever you do I'll like, and I'll do. And then sometimes you want to meet what you hope they want, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? Who has the final say? I've done a commission once where someone said, I said, is it for a particular space, or is it no anything, And then I got back in touch. I thought it could go this way or it could go this way, this work I was doing. She said, I really liked this piece, something along those lines. I thought, am I going taller or wider? And I contacted her and I said, got a special space for it? Have you got somewhere you're going? She'd said anything. She wrote back, she said, oh yes, 10 centimeters by 68 by 17 wide or something. It was like the most specific space ever. It's like, wow, I'm so glad I asked.
It is, yeah.
I did manage it. But I was like, wow, I'm really pleased I did check that.
Because your work is surprisingly big. I mean, I know you said your work boxes were like about your 10 by 10, which is a lovely little size. And you mentioned as well, like if someone was to fall in love with your work, one of the images that you sent through that sort of resonated with me, and I was like, oh wow, I'd love to have that in a home one day, was this one here, the mantra. Absolutely stunning, Jo. Is there a story behind that one? Yeah. You always want what you can't have.
Yeah, that one was about leaving teaching. That one, you can probably see that. It's almost like it's a bonfire going up in a flame of kind of grasses blowing. And they are large. I mean, they are quite large. They go up to about, well, the piece I'm doing at the moment is probably about 4 foot. So they are quite large for the average house. People have bought them for mantelpieces. Some of the work is very slim, so they look great in front of a big mirror or on a mantelpiece. And then I can work with, I can go quite tall but keep it fairly narrow.
Yeah.
And I have done wall pieces as well, where you can hook them onto the wall. But it is a tricky thing with sculpture, because I generally sell to private clients, and not everybody has the space for a sculpture. Most people can fit a painting on the wall, but it is a downside of sculpture that sculpture takes room. Same problem with storing. Where to put them when you've got them hanging around the studio.
Yeah, of course. You work in a studio with 10 other people. It's like a shared space. Yeah, that sounds very...
It's great. When I first moved here, I only had one good friend here that I knew before, and it was a great way of meeting people, and it's a nice social feel. It's lovely to have that kind of companionship, and it's nice to be. We've all got our own spaces within it, but we are an open space, so we're just boarded off. So I know a lot of studios, they're in buildings where they're on corridors, and actually it's really rare that you get to know that many other people, because everyone just disappears into their room. So this isn't like that.
Couple of last questions before I let you go and start your day. I know it's early there. But what's the most important thing for you, Jo, as an artist, or even as a person?
Oh, well, I'd say as an artist, having integrity, doing something that you care about, and that means something to you. So I suppose it could be that you just do what feels right for you. But I think it's really important not to be too influenced by trends or what other people are doing. And I think it's really hard when you're starting out to have that feeling that you know what your voice is or what you're about. And it takes time and it takes mistakes, and it's a case of just keeping going and seeing where it goes. But I suppose what's important is doing something that means something for yourself, and that you hope other people, what you put across isn't necessarily put into words, is it? It's something that communicates on some level, and you hope it communicates well to others, and that they pick up on that unspoken thing.
Yes, words can be so limiting. Yes, definitely. Oh, beautifully said, Jo. So thank you. And everybody's just agrees with you to some things you want to keep. You definitely
sounds mad. People often say to me, "Oh, you guys," I do sell stuff. I just maybe not the walk boxes.
No, keep them. They're your special things.
They're my little love bubbles.
Yeah, exactly. I love bubbles. Maybe you should rebrand them. I love them. The love bubbles. That is so cute.
It's so funny. My partner, it's his birthday next week, and when I met him, I drew him a 7-meter book.
Oh, wow.
I was so loved up, and just making me laugh because it's his birthday next week, and this is going to be such a come down.
You can give him all.
I haven't made a card yet.
That's gorgeous. I'm sure he'll be happy just to spend time with you, Jo. Go on a walk and take some photos and make a walk box. So what's next? What are you looking forward to in your art practice? Have you winter's coming? Have you got
I'm hoping I'm going to do one of your courses.
Oh yes,
I have to say, I've just been bewitched by your beautiful films and courses, and I have to say, I think what you do, I'm not just blowing smoke up your bum. I genuinely think these courses look amazing, because each tutor has sort of said, if I'd known this and I'd had this kind of knowledge, it would have hugely helped me and moved me on. And I think one of the things when you're training as an artist is it doesn't go in a straight line. It's not just, you know, it's all the times in between, and you often do things and you look back and you think, oh, that's why I did that. But these discoveries take a long time, and these people are being very generous with their knowledge, because, you know, everyone develops their own private kind of practice and techniques, and that is part of being an artist. So it's generous to share those methods, but it's also condensing so many years of experience into something that you can go back and look at and help and hopefully take it, but do your own thing from it. You know, I think that's important. Like, don't, you know, it's inevitable that there's a certain amount of copying when you're learning techniques, but like to find your own way of using it. And I think most people want to do that. But I'm digressing. So I hope to do one of your courses. I also want to do, I did a recent course myself in organic inclusions in clay, and a friend of mine, Barbara Gittings, if you don't know her work is stunning. Barbara Gittings. She was so generous. I met her through Instagram, just made contact. She lives in Hove near me. And she was so generous with her time, showing me techniques and things. But unfortunately, I haven't felt able to experiment with a lot of it because of the restrictions in the studio. Like, I want to smoke fire stuff, and I want to, I put a load of stuff in from a walk covered in slip and fired it with my experiments that I'd done after Barbara, because I think I could use thin ceramics within my work, and I have used the odd kind of porcelain burnt away and things. I made so much smoke, the fire brigade came, I had to swear to everyone, I'm not doing that again. So at the moment, but I'm going to do more ceramics. I'm going to do more. I've been doing natural dyes, and I'm learning more about that. I want to incorporate that more. I would like to do things with light as well, and more with shadow, because I think they could make really amazing installations where you have the work suspended and shadows moving. So I don't know. Yeah, I've got lots of ideas.
Watch this space. It sounds amazing. I've heard that rice in porcelain works really beautifully. So then you fire it and the rice disappears, like it burns off.
Yes, although with rice you want to be careful not to push it below the surface, because it can explode. You want to keep the rice in the surface. So it's not so it can still escape. If it gets trapped in, you could blow your work up. But yeah, all sorts of stuff. You'd be surprised, actually.
Yes. And there's a beautiful artist not far from you in Southsea, down at Hot Walls, Annie, and I forget Annie's last name, but she does some beautiful organic ceramics as well, and she almost she creates, like, it looks like lichen out of clay.
Also, remember her name, let me know.
I will. I do have it on the tip of my tongue, but it's Annie at Hot Walls. I can picture her. She's the first one in as you walk down, but not far from you. So just up the coast.
I mean, I've discovered so many. Social media is great like that. I've discovered so many artists that I like, as well as obviously other artists. But it is good.
Yeah, and thank you so much for saying kind words about the courses. I totally agree that
really true.
What the tutors share online with us, and through their own art practices, is incredibly generous. And the students that we have and the community that we've built has been beyond any expectation I could have ever had. I mean,
well done. I mean, it's a great resource. And
it is exciting. Yeah, it is exciting, and lots more to come, Jo, next year. And we're actually broadcasting from a hotel tonight, so we're having our Christmas party tomorrow night with the Fibre Arts Take Two team. So it's going to be nice. We've got a little planning meeting tomorrow, and hope to bring
before the party.
We've got to work. We work before we party. It's just been beautiful, and thank you very much for everyone's beautiful comments about the courses as well. We love producing them. We love doing these Friday feature artists, and it's just been an absolute pleasure, Jo, talking to you tonight.
Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for asking me.
Anytime. We've been, as I said, we've been admiring your work for some time now, and I'm so pleased that you could talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really
Can't
enjoyed
wait
it.
to keep following. I'm going to play a little slideshow now and say goodbye, and everyone can pop their notes of gratitude. And Jo, hang on the line. I'll say a quick goodbye before we head out. But,
Thank you, everyone who tuned in.
Yes, and have a wonderful
Christmas. I'm sorry if I was rabbiting.
Oh no, I loved it. Oh, it was so great. So, and I just want to say, have a great Christmas, everybody, as well, and New Year. We'll come back and start again just early Feb. So can't wait to bring you more wonderful artists like Jo. So it's going to be wonderful.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo.
Bye.